Hidden beneath Virginia's rolling hills and coastlines are secrets that mainstream history can't explain. Ancient earthworks, mysterious stone formations, and artifacts that shouldn't exist. For centuries, these discoveries have sparked debate and challenged everything we think we know about America's past. We're lost civilizations here earlier and far more advanced than we've been told. What if I told you that the Chesapeake Bay, Carolina Bay's anomaly, why thousands of perfectly oval depressions align with a cosmic airburst event 12,000 years ago? One of the most enduring geological mysteries in North America is visible from space, yet remains almost invisible in our understanding of the past. Scattered across the Atlantic coastal plain from northern Florida all the way to New Jersey, with a significant concentration around the Chesapeake Bay region, are hundreds of thousands of strange, elliptical depressions. They are known as the Carolina Bays, and their true origin is a puzzle that has baffled scientists for nearly a century. From the ground, these bays might not look like much more than wetland areas, often swampy or filled with water, forming picturesque ponds and lakes. But from above, their true nature is revealed. They are stunningly geometric. Thousands upon thousands of these basins are shaped like perfect ovals or ellipses, and they all share a bizarre, consistent alignment. Their long axes point with remarkable uniformity in a northwest to southeast direction. They come in all sizes, from small depressions just a few hundred feet across to massive features stretching over a mile in length. For a long time, they were simply considered a curious feature of the landscape, but the question that eventually emerged was a profound one. How does nature create so many perfectly shaped and consistently aligned forms across such a vast area? The conventional explanations began to surface. Perhaps they were formed by sinkholes or by waves lapping against the shore of a giant ancient lake. Maybe they were the result of wind actions scouring out basins during a dry period. But each of these theories ran into a major problem. Sinkholes are typically circular, not oval and aligned. Wave action does not create thousands of identical, non-overlapping basins, and wind might shape a depression, but it doesn't explain the incredible geometric precision and the shared orientation across hundreds of miles. It was as if a giant methodical force had pressed its thumb into the soil of the East Coast over and over again, always facing the same way. This is where the mystery takes a dramatic and even cosmic turn. In the mid-20th century, a revolutionary theory was proposed. What if the Carolina Bays were not formed by slow earthly processes, but in a single catastrophic instant? The theory suggests that these bays are the scars of a cosmic airburst event, the remnants of a giant asteroid or comet that broke apart in the atmosphere and slammed into the Earth's surface in a series of massive explosions. Think of it like throwing a handful of wet mud at a flat surface. The splatters would be elliptical, and they would all point back towards the source of the throw. According to this hypothesis, the Carolina Bays are the splatter marks from a cosmic impact. The timing of this proposed event is what makes it so compelling and so unsettling. Geological studies suggest the bays were formed around 12,800 years ago. This places their creation squarely at the beginning of a mysterious period known as the Younger Dews. This was a time of sudden dramatic climate reversal. The Earth, which was steadily warming after the last ice age, was plunged back into a deep freeze for over 1,000 years. This period also coincides with the extinction of megafauna across North America. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, and saber-toothed cats all vanished. And crucially, it coincides with a significant decline and transformation in the earliest human cultures in North America, the Paleo-Indians of the Clovis tradition. Could all of these events be connected? The younger DUS impact hypothesis proposes exactly that. A comet or asteroid fragments exploding over the North American ice sheet would have been an unimaginable catastrophe. The immediate effects would have included searing fireballs, continent-wide wildfires, and a shockwave that would have literally scarred the continent, creating the Carolina Bays. The long-term effects would have been even worse. The immense heat could have melted large portions of the ice sheet, disrupting ocean currents and triggering the 1,000-year winter of the younger DUs. The ecosystems would have collapsed, leading to the extinction of the great Ice Age animals and making survival nearly impossible for the human populations who relied on them. The evidence for this theory is intriguing. In the sediments dating to that time period, scientists have found a strange black matte layer filled with unusual materials. Nanodiamonds, tiny diamonds formed under immense pressure and heat, magnetic microspherules, melted droplets of rock, and elevated levels of iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroids. These are all considered telltale signs of an extraterrestrial impact, and the geographic distribution of the Carolina Bays, all pointing towards a central area over the Great Lakes, seems to suggest an epicenter for the cataclysm. But as with any good mystery, the case is not closed. Skeptics point out that not all Carolina Bays are the same age. Some core samples suggest they formed at different times. Others argue that the impact-related materials are not found consistently enough to prove the theory. Could the bays have been formed by a more complex combination of Ice Age permafrost and subsequent groundwater movement? The debate is fierce and the scientific community remains divided. So we are left with two compelling yet incomplete pictures. One is of a slow geological process we do not fully understand, creating a landscape of elegant aligned ovals over millennia. The other is a snapshot of a single terrifying day when the sky fell and reshaped a continent, leaving behind a field of scars that are still visible from space. The Carolina Bays are a silent testament to a violent event that may have changed the course of history in North America, or they are a natural phenomenon whose secret recipe has been lost to time. Either way, they challenge our understanding of the very ground beneath our feet. But not all mysteries. The Susquehannocks vanished, fortifications, how a powerful tribe known for palisaded towns disappeared from historical records after the 17th century, are written in the landscape. Some are written in the fleeting pages of history, only to be erased before we fully understood what we were seeing. Now we turn from cosmic cataclysms to a human enigma. The story of a powerful people who dominated the Chesapeake watershed only to vanish from the historical record, leaving behind only the ghostly outlines of their formidable towns. This is the mystery of the Susquehannock people. In the 16th and 17th centuries, European explorers and colonists pushing up the great rivers of the Chesapeake Bay encountered a nation that commanded respect and often fear. The Susquehannock were a powerful Iroquoian-speaking people known to their neighbors and rivals as fierce warriors and shrewd traders. They controlled a vast territory, with their influence radiating out from the Susquehanna River, a waterway that bears their name to this day. What truly astonished the Europeans, however, were their towns. These were not temporary camps or small villages. The Susquehannock built impressive, heavily fortified settlements surrounded by massive palisaded walls. Early accounts describe these fortifications in Aruck terms. The palisades were constructed from enormous tree trunks sunk deep into the ground and standing well over 20 ft high. These walls were not simple fences. They were complex defensive structures, often consisting of multiple layers, with platforms for defenders to stand on and fire down upon attackers. Some reports describe forts that could house up to 2,000 people within their protective embrace. These were formidable strongholds designed to withstand prolonged sieges and send a clear message of power and permanence. The Susquehannock were a force to be reckoned with, a settled and organized society at the height of its influence. Their power was built on a foundation of economic strength. The Susquehannock established themselves as the central middlemen in the fur trade, controlling the flow of beaver pelts and European goods between tribes deep in the interior and the new colonial settlements on the coast. Their strategic location on the Susquehanna River made them the gatekeepers of a commercial empire. For a time, they skillfully played the English colonists in Maryland and Virginia against their rivals, the Iroquois Confederacy to the north. They seemed unstoppable. But then, within a few short decades, their world collapsed. The downfall of the Susquehannock was as swift as it was tragic. A combination of factors converged into a perfect storm of disaster. First came new diseases. European illnesses like smallpox, to which Native Americans had no immunity, swept through their densely populated towns with devastating effect, wiping out a significant portion of their population and crippling their societal structure.
Then came intensified warfare. Their long-standing enemies, the Iroquois Confederacy, now armed with European guns, began a relentless campaign to destroy them and take control of the lucrative fur trade. The great forts, once symbols of their strength, became targets. The final blow came in the form of colonial pressure and betrayal. As conflicts between colonists and native tribes escalated, the Susquehannock were often caught in the middle. After being attacked by Maryland militia in a case of mistaken identity, the surviving Susquehannock were forced to abandon their ancestral lands along the Susquehanna River in the 1670s. They dispersed, some seeking refuge with former allies, others being absorbed by their conquerors, the Iroquois. And then within a generation they simply vanished as a distinct independent nation from the historical record. But here is where the historical mystery deepens into an archaeological one. If these people were so powerful with such impressive towns, where did all their fortifications go? The answer is both simple and haunting. They have largely vanished from the landscape. Unlike the stone castles of Europe, these were wooden structures. When abandoned, the great palisade walls would have rotted away, returning to the earth. The towns themselves, once bustling centers of trade and culture, were reclaimed by the forest, their outlines fading beneath centuries of soil and vegetation. Today, archaeologists work to find these lost strongholds. They are not looking for standing walls, but for subtle traces, dark stains in the soil where the massive wooden posts once stood, forming the distinct patterns of the palisades. They look for remnants of long houses, refuse pits, and trade goods. Each discovery is a monumental task, like finding a ghostly footprint. The most famous of these sites, known as the Susquehannock Fort in present-day Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, was a massive settlement that has been painstakingly mapped through these post-hole patterns, revealing the grand scale of their community. The mystery of the Susquehannock is not necessarily one of a people who physically disappeared without a trace. Their descendants live on primarily within the Iroquois Confederacy, especially the Seneca Nation. The mystery is one of historical evaporation. How could a society so powerful, so central to the early history of the region, fade so completely from the physical landscape and the mainstream historical narrative in such a short time? Their story is a poignant reminder of the fragility of even the mightiest civilizations in the face of disease, war, and the relentless passage of time. The earth reclaimed their forts, and history nearly forgot their name, leaving us to piece together the legacy of the lords of the Susquehanna from the silent stains in the soil. Deep in the Barbersville shrine mounds, whether a series of unusual earthworks were ceremonial platforms or astronomical observatories, the Virginia landscape, not far from a plantation house later designed by Thomas Jefferson, lies an enigma that predates European settlement by centuries. These are the Barbersville Mounds, a series of earthworks whose true purpose has been lost to time. Were they sacred ceremonial platforms, sophisticated astronomical observatories, or perhaps both? The answer is buried within the soil and the silent alignment of their forms. The mounds are attributed to the Adena culture, a prehistoric Native American people who inhabited the region from about 1000 BC to about 200 AD. The Adena are renowned as the earliest mound-building culture in the region. Known for their expertly engineered conical earthworks, Constructing such mounds was a monumental task requiring a highly organized community. Historians estimate that building a large mound required the movement of more than 57,000 tons of sand and earth, all carried by the basket load. This was not the work of a simple nomadic tribe, but of a society with complex spiritual beliefs and social structure. The very act of building the mound was likely as important as its final purpose, a collective endeavor that may have helped solidify community identity and leadership. The most compelling theories about the Barbersville mounds revolve around their function. The ceremonial platform theory is strongly supported by known Adena practices. These mounds often served as burial sites for important figures. Archaeologists have found mounds containing multiple burials at different levels, where individuals were laid to rest with grave goods, such as flint tools, beads, pipes, and ornaments made of mica and copper. These items, offerings for the afterlife or reminders of a life lived, suggest the mound was a sacred space for honoring the dead. Furthermore, the Adena built circular wooden structures that may have been used for both domestic and ceremonial purposes, indicating that their entire settlement layout could have had spiritual significance. The more speculative yet fascinating theory is that the mounds functioned as an astronomical observatory. This idea is part of a broader pattern seen in ancient cultures worldwide, where structures were aligned with celestial events. While specific alignments for the Barbersville mounds are not detailed in the available sources, other Adena sites and later mound-building cultures demonstrate precise knowledge of solar and lunar cycles. It is plausible that the placement of the Barbersville mounds was deliberately chosen to mark the solstices or equinoxes. A causeway leading up to the monumental structure, a feature found at the Grave Creek Mound, could have served as a sight line for observing the sunrise on a specific day of the year. The mounds would thus be a physical calendar, connecting the community to the cycles of the cosmos. The mystery deepens when we consider that the flat area around Barbersville was likely once covered with multiple mounds and earthworks, most of which have been lost to time, destroyed by treasure hunters and farming. This means we are left with an incomplete picture. The remaining mounds are isolated sentinels of a much more complex sacred landscape. What other alignments or relationships between these structures have we missed? Without a written record, the full meaning of the Barbersville mounds may remain just out of reach, a silent testament to the sophisticated worldview of the Adena people. What if everything we thought we knew about the first humans and the Cactus Hill pre-Clovis enigma? Why a Virginia site may prove human presence thousands of years before previously thought. America was wrong? For decades, the story was simple and widely accepted. The first people to set foot on this continent were the Clovis culture, arriving from Siberia across the Bering Land Bridge around 13,000 years ago. Their distinct stone spear points found alongside the bones of mammoths were considered the smoking gun of the first Americans. But then a sandy hill in Virginia, dotted with prickly pear cacti, began to tell a different, much older story. This is the enigma of Cactus Hill, a site that may rewrite human history by proving a presence thousands of years before previously thought. The Cactus Hill site is located on a wind-formed dune overlooking the Nowaway River in Sussex County. Its name comes from the resilient cacti that thrive in the sandy soil. To the untrained eye, it might look like an unremarkable field, but beneath the surface lies a timeline etched in layers of sand and silt. Archaeologists discovered that the site contains a near-continuous record of human habitation, from the well-known woodland and archaic periods all the way down to the Paleo-Indian era. But the real shock was what they found beneath the Clovis layer. In a stunning stratigraphic sequence, excavators uncovered evidence of human activity in a soil level physically older than the Clovis occupation. This pre-Clovis layer contained charcoal, stone blades, and distinctive projectile points that were different from anything seen before. The methods used to date this lower layer are crucial to the mystery. Scientists didn't rely on a single technique. They used radiocarbon dating on charcoal fragments, which returned dates as old as 15,000 to 19,700 years. To confirm this, they used another method called optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, which determines the last time sediment grains were exposed to sunlight. The OSL dating corroborated the radioarbon dates, suggesting the pre-Clovis artifacts were buried between 18,000 and 20,000 years ago. This multi-pronged approach makes the case for Cactus Hill particularly strong. The evidence wasn't just a few scattered stones. It was a coherent layer of human habitation, sealed beneath the established Clovis layer, with multiple scientific tests pointing to the same incredible age. The implications of this discovery are seismic. If humans were in Virginia 18,000 to 20,000 years ago, the traditional Clovis first model collapses. During that period, the continental ice sheets were at their maximum extent, potentially blocking the inland corridor from Alaska to the Great Plains. This has forced scientists to propose alternative migration routes. Perhaps the first Americans didn't come by an inland path at all, but by boat, skillfully skirting the Pacific coastline, navigating from Asia thousands of years earlier than we imagined. An even more controversial idea, known as the Solutrean hypothesis, suggests that some of these very early inhabitants may have come from Europe, crossing the North Atlantic along the edge of the pack ice. While this theory is not widely accepted, it was the discoveries at sites like Cactus Hill that made such radical ideas even worth considering. Of course, a claim this extraordinary faces intense scrutiny. The main question is whether the sandy soil of the dune could have been disturbed over millennia, perhaps by animal burrowing or root growth, mixing older artifacts into younger layers and creating a false pre-Clovis appearance. However, detailed micromorphological analysis of the soil strata, essentially studying the soil under a microscope, suggests that the layers are largely intact and that the occupation levels have not been significantly mixed. While the debate continues, the sheer volume of evidence from Cactus Hill, the stratified layers, the consistent dating, the unique tools makes a compelling case. It forces us to look at the peopling of the Americas not as a single event, but as a complex and likely much earlier process. The silent sandy hill in Virginia stands as a powerful challenge to our textbooks, a reminder that the deepest chapters of human history are still being uncovered, one careful excavation at a time. What the Powhatan's Mantle's secret symbols, what the complex patterns on a sacred deerskin truly represent about a lost worldview. Does a sacred skin stretched across time and an ocean truly tell us about a lost world? In the hallowed halls of the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford University, far from its native soil, resides one of the most evocative artifacts from early colonial America, a monumental deerskin known as Powhatan's Mantle. This is not a simple garment. It is a vast canvas of tanned buckskin measuring over 7 ft long and 5 ft wide, pieced together from 4 deerskins and embroidered with a stunning 20,000 small marine shells. The sheer scale and intricate labor speak to its profound importance. But the real mystery lies not in its construction, but in the cryptic symbols these shells form. A silent map of a people's cosmology, power, and worldview, largely lost to us today. The mantle's description was first recorded in a 1656 catalogue of a London collection as being Powhatan, King of Virginia's habit, all embroidered with shells or rowan oak. While its direct connection to the paramount chief Powhatan himself is debated, it is unquestionably a treasure of the Chesapeake Algonquian peoples from the early 1600s. Scholars note it was likely not meant for regular wear, but was probably hung on display within a grand interior or temple, a focal point of spiritual and political power. At the center of the design is a human figure flanked by 2 animals in profile. The animal on the right has cloven hooves, a short tail, and large ears, leading many researchers to identify it as a white-tailed deer, the very creature that provided the skin for the mantle itself. The animal on the left, however, is more enigmatic. It has claws, a long tail, and relatively small ears. Some suggest it represents a wolf, while others propose a mountain lion, a powerful and respected predator. These figures are surrounded by 34 spirally formed roundlets, arranged with approximate symmetry. Each element is meticulously crafted from polished shells, with some ground down into bead-like shapes, and others perforated for sewing. So what do these complex patterns truly represent? Without a written key from its creators, we are left with informed speculation. One compelling theory is that the mantle is a literal map of Powhatan's domain. The central human figure could symbolize Powhatan as the central authority, with the 2 animals representing powerful allied or subjugated tribes. their characteristics serving as clan totems. The circles could then indicate the 30 or more villages that owed him allegiance, charting the political landscape of the Tidewater region around 6008. This would make the mantle not just a ceremonial object, but a document of sovereignty. Another interpretation delves deeper into the spiritual realm. The animals may be sacred spirit guides, and the circles could represent celestial bodies or cosmic cycles, connecting the chief's authority to the natural and supernatural order. The deer, a source of sustenance, and the cougar, a symbol of lethal power, might embody fundamental forces of life and death that Powhatan was believed to mediate. The deliberate symmetry and balance of the design suggest a worldview centered on duality and equilibrium. It is a visual representation of a philosophy that saw the human, natural, and spirit worlds as deeply interconnected. This sacred object, therefore, may have been a powerful tool for maintaining that balance, a focal point for rituals that ensured the community's survival. The mantle's journey to Oxford is a mystery in itself. It was part of the famed tradeskin collection, assembled in the first half of the 17th century. Some have speculated it was a gift from Captain John Smith or another colonist, perhaps even the very scarlet cloak and apparel used to crown Phaeton during a ceremony. But we may never know for certain. What we are left with is a breathtaking artifact whose core meaning traveled with the last of those who understood its symbols in full. The patterns on Powhatan's mantle are a hauntingly beautiful code, a glimpse into a sophisticated and complex worldview that was dramatically and irrevocably changed by the arrival of Europeans. It challenges us to wonder what other profound secrets about this lost world are still waiting silent for us to understand. The Chesapeake Spanish coin mystery, how 16th century European coins appeared in a pre-contact Native American village site. Imagine this. At a peaceful archaeological site in Virginia, the soil gives up something that simply shouldn't be there. A 16th century Spanish coin. But here's the problem. The village where it was found was abandoned long before Spanish explorers ever reached the New World. How did this coin get there? It's a discovery that has baffled archaeologists for decades, raising profound questions about transoceanic contact, trade routes, and historical timelines we thought we understood. The heart of this mystery lies with the Accock Creek site, also known as Moyon, a significant archaeological location in Prince George's County, Maryland, near the Chesapeake Bay watershed. This site was inhabited intermittently since 2000 BC, but it was abandoned sometime during the late 16th or early 17th century before sustained European contact. It was a palisaded village of the Piscataway people, a sophisticated society with a well-established culture. Now consider the coin. The artifact in question is typically a 16th century Spanish coin, likely an 8 reals or piece of 8. These silver coins, often minted in Mexico or Peru, were the workhorse currency of the Spanish Empire in the 1500s, used in trade across the globe. But according to all known records, Spanish exploration of the Chesapeake area didn't begin in earnest until the latter part of that century, by which time the Moyon village was supposed to be empty. So how did a European coin end up in a pre-Cont archaeological layer? One theory suggests it could be evidence of earlier unrecorded transoceanic contact. Perhaps a Spanish vessel blown off course on its way to the Caribbean or South America made landfall in the Chesapeake and traded with local tribes. The coin could have entered trade networks as a curiosity or a source of raw material, circulating for decades or even a century before finally being lost at the village site. We know Native American tribes had extensive trade routes and objects could travel vast distances. The other possibility is that the coin is a later intrusion. Perhaps a colonial-era settler dropped it, or it was buried at a much later date and somehow became mixed into an older archaeological layer. Stratigraphic confusion is always a challenge in archaeology. However, if the coin was indeed found in a secure pre-context, it would force historians to reevaluate the timeline. Does it mean the Piscataway had encounters with Europeans earlier than we think? Or is it simply an anomaly, a historical accident that needs explaining? What makes this mystery so captivating is its implications. If a 16th century Spanish coin truly appeared at a pre-Cont site, it challenges the traditional narrative of first contact between Native Americans and Europeans. It hints that history might be more complex, filled with brief interactions and early exchanges we have yet to fully understand. This small piece of silver is more than currency. It's a messenger from a past that might have been different than we imagine, waiting silently to tell its tale. Now let's turn from a mystery on the coast to a mystery in the mountains. The Appalachian Wall Complex. Whether extensive ancient stone walls are colonial field clearances or prehistoric structures, deep in the Appalachians of West Virginia, on a remote ridge 1500 ft above the Kanawha River, lies a puzzle almost lost to time. The Mount Carbon stone walls. These are not the neat colonial-era stone walls you find in New England fields. These are ancient weathered windows of stone snaking through secluded forests, their origin and purpose utterly shrouded in mystery. Are they a feat of prehistoric engineering or the product of early settlers' labor? The answer remains elusive. The Mount Carbon walls were first documented in the 1870s, but local lore suggests they are far older. They are not a continuous defensive wall, but a series of separate, loosely piled stacks of black flint slabs described as being in a distinct horseshoe shape. The largest segment was over 2 football fields long, up to 25 ft wide, and around 4 ft high. But what truly baffles researchers is the context. The walls sit on an extremely remote steep ridge, far from any evidence of permanent settlement. No pottery, tools, dwellings, or burials have been found. Nothing to suggest anyone ever lived there long term. So who built them and why? Theories about the builders vary. Some researchers, like West Virginia state archaeologist Edward McKeichel, pointed to the Adena people as likely suspects, the only prehistoric culture in the region, with a population and social organization large enough to undertake such a project. The Adena are known for their earthworks, but stone walls are less common. Others have suggested they could be from the even older Archaic period. As for the purpose, the guesses are even more varied. Early observers thought they might be animal pens, but their construction wasn't suited for that, and the location was too impractical. Military defense seems unlikely, as the segments aren't continuous enough to block attackers. The most prevalent theory, though still speculative, is that the walls had a ritual or ceremonial use. Perhaps they were part of a large ceremonial site for gatherings, astronomical observation, or spiritual rituals. The horseshoe layout could have held cosmological significance. In 1958, University of Georgia archaeologist James Keller conducted a grueling excavation of the site. He deconstructed a section of the wall, digging down to the top soil, but found no definitive evidence to date them or determine their use. He left empty-handed, calling their function and age unknowable. Tragically, in the 1970s, 3 of the walls were accidentally destroyed by strip mining operations, potentially taking crucial clues to solving the mystery with them forever. Today, the remnants of the Mount Carbon stone walls remain, silent testaments to a lost story. Are they the product of colonial field clearance, or the remnants of a much older, more mysterious civilization? Without conclusive proof, we may never know for sure. They challenge our simple view of Appalachia as pristine wilderness, hinting that complex, organized societies may have existed here before the forest returned. These ancient stone walls remind us that history is often not written neatly in books, but etched into the landscape, waiting for those willing to venture deep into the woods to read it. History is not just a record of who appeared. The disappearance of the Saponi tribe, is also the silent story of those who vanished from the record. In the rolling Piedmont of Virginia and the Corollas, along the rivers that fed the growing colonies, lived the Saponi people. They were a Siouan-Peking tribe, once a powerful and distinct nation, documented by early European explorers like John Smith and John Lederer. They were farmers, hunters, and allies, but by the end of the 18th century, they had largely disappeared from the official historical narrative. The question is, what happened to the Saponi? Did they simply fade away, or did they transform their identity, merging into the landscape itself until it became invisible? In the early 1600s, the Saponi were a formidable force, part of a broader group of Eastern Swan tribes often referred to as the Monarch and Confederacy. They lived in palisaded villages, cultivating corn, beans, and squash. Their world, however, was about to be shattered by a tidal wave of change. The arrival of European colonists brought relentless pressure. The Saponi, like their neighbors, were devastated by waves of new diseases like smallpox to which they had no immunity. Their population plummeted. At the same time, they became caught in the violent crossfire of colonial conflicts and the aggressive expansion of the Iroquois Confederacy from the north, who raided their territories for captives and dominance. Facing existential threats, the Saponi made a strategic decision. They began a series of migrations, moving southward to escape the violence. For a time, they found a precarious refuge in what is now North Carolina, near the trading post at Fort Christina, established by Virginia Governor Alexander Spotswood in 1714. The fort was meant to serve as a school for Christianizing and assimilating the Saponi and other tribes, and as a defensive buffer for the colony. For a few years, it seemed like a possible path to survival. But the political winds shifted. The fort was closed in 1717 and the Saponi were once again left vulnerable. This began their gradual dispersal. This is where the mystery of their disappearance deepens. The conventional historical record often marks tribes like the Saponi as extinct, but this is a misleading term. They did not vanish from the earth. They vanished from the paper trail. There are several theories about what became of them. One is that they were absorbed into larger, more powerful tribes for protection. Some Saponi likely joined the Catawba Nation in South Carolina, while others may have moved north and been incorporated into the Iroquois, particularly the Cayuga. Another more compelling theory is that they never left at all. Instead, they retreated into the marginal lands, intermarried with European settlers and free African Americans, and formed what would later be known as tri-racial isolate communities. In these communities, their distinct tribal identity was gradually submerged, but their ancestry lived on. Today, groups like the Akanichi Band of the Saponi Nation in North Carolina and the Haliwa Saponi tribe are state-recognized, working to revitalize the culture and language that was once thought lost. Their disappearance was not an ending, but a transformation, a strategic fatting into the background to ensure survival. The story of the Saponi is not one of extinction, but of resilience. A reminder that sometimes to endure, a people must become invisible to the eyes of history, only to re-emerge when the time is right. Now let's turn to the Great Serpent Mound of Virginia mystery, carved into the very earth. A colossal effigy so large its form can only be fully appreciated from the sky. When we think of giant serpent mounds, the world-famous example in Ohio immediately comes to mind. But Virginia holds its own enigmatic secrets. Across the state, particularly in the southwestern region, there are reports and remnants of ancient serpentine earthworks. These are long, sinuous mounds of earth shaped like a giant snake, often with a distinct coiled tail or a gaping mouth. Who built these massive structures? And what powerful message were they meant to convey across millennia? The most famous of these, though now largely plowed under, was once located in Lee County. Early settlers and antiquarians documented a substantial serpent effigy mound there, a testament to a mound-building tradition that stretched across the eastern woodlands. Unlike the burial mounds of the later Mississippian period, effigy mounds like these are believed to be primarily ceremonial. They are not tombs for the dead, but symbols for the living and the spiritual world. Their construction required a massive coordinated effort, meaning the people who built them possessed a sophisticated understanding of engineering and a deeply shared cosmology. The most obvious question is why a serpent? In the belief systems of many Native American cultures, the serpent is a potent and complex symbol. It often represents the cycle of life, death, and rebirth because of its ability to shed its skin. It is also intimately connected to the underworld and the life-giving power of water. Some researchers propose that the serpent mound was a giant astronomical calendar. The curves and coils of the Ohio serpent, for instance, align with the solstice sunsets and the rising of certain stars. It is possible the Virginia serpent mound served a similar purpose, acting as a giant observatory that connected the people to the cycles of the cosmos. Another theory links the serpent directly to the landscape. These mounds are often found near rivers or on prominent ridges. The serpent as a water spirit could have been an offering to ensure a steady supply of water or to protect against floods. The undulating form of the snake mirroring the flow of a river is a powerful poetic image that would not have been lost on its builders. The mound may have been the physical embodiment of a powerful river spirit, a prayer made of earth. The greatest tragedy is that many of Virginia's serpent mounds have been destroyed by agriculture and development before they could be properly studied. We are left with fragments and early descriptions. This loss makes the mystery all the more profound. Were these Virginia serpents related to the great one in Ohio, part of a widespread cultural phenomenon? Or were they unique creations of a local culture expressing a similar idea independently? Without more archaeological evidence, we can only speculate. The serpent mounds of Virginia are ghosts in the landscape. Their bodies largely return to the soil. They challenge us to look at the land with different eyes, to see the sacred shapes that once defined it, and to wonder what profound truths about the universe their builders were trying to etch permanently into the earth.